fishing, and the great outdoors? Then come along today with Dave Embry in search of the world's greatest outdoor adventures. You'll go all over the world, from Alaska to South America, Canada to Mexico, in search of the most elusive and dangerous game in the world. This is Dave Embry's Adventures in the Wild. Today on Adventures in the Wild, go with Dave south to Texas in search of the massive antlered South Texas whitetail. Outside the small town of Carrizo Springs, just 30 miles north of the Mexican border, Dave will team up with Donny Worthington, game biologist at the Tortuga Ranch. Here, in the midst of the rut, Dave and Donny will attempt to rattle up some of those big antlered bucks out searching for a fight. So now, here's Dave to tell you more about the South Texas whitetails.
Well, when you think about fall hunting, you usually think about whitetail. And when you think about whitetail, you usually think about those early morning treks through the woods by flashlight, tripping over every single log and getting stuck by every thorn, bush, and briar along the trail as you're going down to that tree stand. But something that's really getting popular and is very exciting is what we call rattling. Down in Texas, especially along the Rio Grande, whitetail hunters have been calling them in very successfully for decades now. Down in deep South Texas, the rut, or the mating season, for whitetail doesn't get started until early December and usually runs till about mid to late January. This is the time that you want to rattle for deer, during the rut. To a deer, the commotion made by the antlers clashing, brush breaking, and ground stomping and wrecking can only mean one thing: bucks fighting for territorial rights to breed the does that are in estrus or in heat. This will sometimes bring in a few curious inferior bucks, just wanting to get a ringside seat. But it will nearly always bring in the dominant buck for that area. When he hears someone else out there fighting for his area, you can be sure he's going to come running to the scene to protect his territory. And when he comes in, you better be ready, because he may not be shy, but come charging in looking for a fight. Many bucks will come out and just stare at you. You see, they're really not sure what you are. If he can't smell you, and he can only see a part of your silhouette, and his ears are telling him that he should be seeing bucks there fighting, well, he's just sort of confused and stands there trying to figure the whole situation out. But then again, Mr. Big Rack may sneak up through the brush to size up his opponent, and then just a few yards from you, stick his head out around a bush, catch you off guard, and be gone just that quick. Rattling usually works best when there's a lot of competition for does by the bucks. If there are many does in relation to bucks, and the bucks are keeping quite busy and worn out tending the does, then he may not be interested in more and not respond to the rattling. But if there are relatively less does per buck, then there will be fierce competition between the bucks for the does. In any case, give it a try in your area sometime. At least it won't be as boring as sitting in a tree stand as it can sometimes be. It may end up being the wildest morning deer hunting you've ever had. Let's go now and let Donny tell us a little bit more about those rattling horns. Well, Donny Worthington, Tortuga Ranch. How are we going to do this expert deer calling today? Rattling these things in?
These South Texas deer are coming into rut right now. And really they're close to their peak, which means they'll just about come to anything. But we're going to try rattle them up a little bit.
Are these some special horns you made up? They look pretty...
yeah, these are quite specialized for me. These are custom fitted. Spend a lot of time, when you spend a lot of time rattling, you try and get something that doesn't beat your hands up, has good sound, good tone.
What are you looking for? I mean, you just...
Well, this antler's a lot longer, and it's kind of the one I use for tone, and these longer tines here are more deeper tone. These shorter ones are lighter tone, so I can use them at different times. When a deer is just sparring, I try and work the ends of the antlers, make a little lighter sound, because when they're not fighting so hard, they don't make that, and they're afraid of the louder sound.
I see.
I try and work this antler into the other one, and just mimic the sound of two deer fighting. And if it's the time of the year when they're really getting after it, then you work the antler more into here, and the more you work it, the louder it comes.
Well, you're actually a game biologist, right? You're degree. What degree is that?
I have a Master of Science in Forestry, but it's in Wildlife Science. And I got my degree in Nacogdoches at Stephen F. Austin.
So you got about, what, 5,000, 6,000 acres here?
Yeah, we've got a little over 5,000 acres, and we've been intensively managing it for about 5 years now. it has been under some kind of game management for, a good 8 or 9 years from another biologist.
What goes into that management? What are you trying to do in the management? You cull certain bucks, you genetics to get your hybrid genetics?
Yeah, we always color bucks. You always work on your genetics, but the main thing you want to work on first is getting the right number. Get your ranch up to carrying capacity where you can actually have a good number of deer to see.
Right.
And then you begin to work on your buck-doe ratio so that the deer that you see are bucks.
Right.
And since that's your product, that's what you want to try and produce.
Stay tuned. Adventures in the Wild will return right after this.
Well, I guess that's a misconception. A lot of places think that the more does there are, a lot of states I've gone into, they've got the policies where they don't shoot any does. They might have a 3, 5, or 6 buck limit in a year, or 1 a day in some places, and yet have a one doe day where you take 1 doe.
That's true.
And then when you go out in the field hunting, it seems like I'm seeing 50 does wandering around, and then you might see 1 buck come out, but these does actually are using the nutrition.
That's right. Why feed the doe when you can feed the buck? And that's the product. I mean, you're not after deer, you're after buck deer.
Right.
And the better buck deer, and that's when you get your buck doe right, that's when you begin to work on your genetics. We always cull spikes here because I just can't see letting him eat groceries and the chance that he'll be a real good deer. So you've seen some good 8 and 10 and 6-point yearlings, and that's what we're after.
Right.
I mean, that's going to be a good deer on down the line, say 5, 6 years.
So a good deer here that you've been managing will pop out the actually first year with horns. It'll come out with, when we say horns, we actually mean antlers, but it's sort of a slang we all use. But it'll actually come out with antler growth of maybe a 6 or an 8 point first year.
I really like to look at the 6 and 8 point bucks. We've had some that are even more than that. We've had a 2-year-old kill that had 17 points on it. So that's what you're really after.
A lot of people are misconceived. They think a first year is always a spiked buck, or a little fork horn or something. They think that's a first year buck, but that's just
not always true.
Yeah.
That's not always true. When you really get to work on your genetics, and that's really the last thing you do in your management is you get your buck doe right, then you work on your genetics, because you want to have the bucks there to work with. Right. So you get your bucks right, then you work on your genetics bucks. And if you get to the point where you're working on spread, then you work on your spread deer. It's just the desirable traits you keep, and the ones you don't like, you get rid of. Whether it's 3.5 or 2.5 or 1.5-year-old deer or 5.5-year-old deer, if it's a cull buck, you shoot it.
Donnie, how do you manage your deer herds here? What are you looking for whenever you do that?
Well,
spread's
always big in South Texas, but in this particular area, spread is not that big a deal. It's more mass, and the way it's carried through the antlers, a good bit of tine length and a lot of mass in the tines denotes kind of an older deer. If you go further south down into Webb County, then you get a little more mass, but you lose the tines. And our deer actually score on the Boone and Crockett scale as well as theirs do, but they're not quite as wide.
Right.
But the record book deer that we've killed is he doesn't have about a 19.5-inch inside spread, and he's only a 10-point. So he has tremendous mass and length. But that's what I look for. I'll never cull one because he's a little too narrow. I mean, because if you're looking at a 16-inch buck that's 4 years old, he's probably going to add a few more inches in the next year when you go to take him anyway. So you're looking at an 18, 19-inch buck, and that's a good buck. Yeah. Anybody's buck.
Well, me, that's what I love, mass. Mass is what I really like to see, some real mass.
Now, that's me. I like the mass and the height and the spread. I would not sacrifice a spread for the mass, because that's really what sticks out on a deer. That's what you can see.
Donnie, what's that you got in your pocket there?
Oh, this is a grunt call. That's something new that everybody's been using. It's one of the vocalizations that deer make at different times. I use it as kind of an attractant and what I call a stopper. If a buck's starting to leave, and when you rattle him in and he comes in on the edge and he's not real excited about coming to the horns, then sometimes you can grunt him to make him get more attracted to the horns and come on in. Or if you got a big buck, a lot of times big bucks will come in and leave.
Sort of calms them a little bit.
Yeah,
too. They might hear that.
It's something that they associate. And buck deer do it. I've heard does do it occasionally. But that we use it a lot. If a big buck comes in and he's starting to leave, we'll grunt and stop him just in time for the hunt to shoot. That's kind of what that's really the reason I carry it. And it is kind of a
Give me a little
natural
sample.
deer.
How you do it. Of course, you don't use it a whole lot, do you?
No, I don't use it, and when you use it, you don't ever blow it real loud. It's always something that the deer, it's kind of a mutter. And sometimes it's even guttural when it comes out.
Okay. Well, Donnie, then we're going to sit here like we've been here talking for a few minutes, but we'll wait a few more minutes and we'll start rattling these things up. And I guess these deer are so much in heat and in love at this time of year that they just sort of run over you, so we can almost, we can't move around and carry on quite a bit, but you're telling me that they'll just come in and just run over you sometimes no matter what you're doing. So that's what we'll get ready to do here, and go ahead and get with it.
All right.
We're just going to watch around the little bushes and stuff around and see if we want to poke his head out. Okay. Well, they usually come in pretty quick or slow, or?
It depends. Depends on how much in love he is. If he's really in love and he's really protecting his territory, he's got some fresh scrapes by, he really will just run over you. I've had them come in as close as 10 feet from me. But most of the time they'll come in and they'll peer into the edge of these senderos and check it out a little bit and try and circle you downwind. But sometimes they will just run over you when they come in.
Okay. See him? Yeah, he's a little bit smaller, don't you think, Donnie?
Yeah, I think it's just a 3-point.
Yeah, there he goes, back in the brush.
Stopped him.
He sort of came out and took a little look there, didn't he? I thought I heard some snorting over there to his left. Here he comes back out. Comes back out. You called him back in. You got him back out.
Usually you can get back to that. Don't try and check it.
He's probably just hoping a whole bunch that it's not really people. He's wanting to see a doe or some bucks out here with some buck does around. Yeah, I saw the spot, kept looking at it, finally picked the binoculars up.
Stay tuned. Adventures in the Wild will return right after this.
He's got a wide rack on her. Not a whole lot of height. Not much height.
It's not what he expected.
Put some of those horns on top of her head.
Don't try and come in. That's what you like to see in your yearlings.
Well, I guarantee you. Coming up and around for the first year. Boom, there he goes.
We never figured out where we were either.
Here comes that act. Well, pretty good. Seen all these deer here this morning already.
That's a little more encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, they seem to be rattling in good this morning. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this morning right here, just one spot.
See, these things do work.
Yeah, yeah.
you see back down there?
Hey, look, right there. Right at the edge of the brush. Right at the edge of your brush. Oh, look at the mass. Look at the mass on him. Oh, my goodness, he's heavy.
20 inches at least.
That's a taker there. That's a taker there. Stay in there, fella. Stay there. Hey, there's another one beside him. All right. He's in the brush, though. Boy, you can barely see his head coming out. He's got to come out a little bit more before I can do anything. That's a long shot. We're probably a good 210, 220
Yeah, you're over 200.
yards. Did come out of that brush. Come out of the brush, right? All right, right at the edge of the brush. All I can see is his neck.
Okay, you gotta take
Okay.
it. Good shot.
Hey, it hit him. Woo, look at that.
Good
I don't
shot.
believe it. He's still...
Excellent shot.
He's in the brush. He's down in the brush.
Good shot.
I saw him drop. I guess he's still down.
Yeah, he's down.
Okay,
He's down.
we better get down there and see, I guess.
Kicking a little
What it
bit.
looks like.
He's down.
All right,
Good
let's
shot.
go.
Excellent.
Well, we'll see if he's still there. He's still down there. Oh, look, rabbit. Thought the rabbit would have run off and scared us.
That doesn't even bump left.
Well, I heard a hard hit. I know it hit him. I saw him go down for a minute anyway. So.
He's down. I don't think he's gonna go too far anyway.
Okay, so.
Good deer.
Boy, I hope he's still there.
Yeah, he's not.
Well, I
Not
shot
going
to his
in.
neck, so hopefully that's probably what dropped his head like that.
He's down. He went down. It's like 8 in mass.
Yeah, he was. That's what I was impressed with, was the heaviness of him.
And dog catchers.
Look at him. Look at that mass on him.
Nice
Oh,
deer.
gorgeous, gorgeous,
Good deer.
gorgeous deer.
Good deer, Dave.
Woo, Lordy.
Excellent shot right in the neck.
Sure did.
Excellent.
That was a little shaky offhand like that, I tell
Yeah.
you. Yeah, he's good. Oh, look at that deer. Oh, my goodness.
Excellent deer.
Look at this guy.
Nice deer.
Looky here. Look at how he's been rubbing.
Yeah. He's polished these almost white right here
Oh,
just
boy.
today. That's some of
something.
today's work.
Well, you tell by his neck, I guess, Donnie, you say he's pretty much well into the rut, right?
Yeah, he's definitely been running for several days.
How else can you tell when in a rut with their musk glands down here?
Yeah, the antlers, rubbing on the antlers, and then the glands, the tarsal glands, they urinate on these, and these have been well worked. See the stains on the leg?
Oh, sure are.
They'll be a little wider and more gray whenever they're
Right.
not working them so heavy. But he has definitely been working some scrapes with these.
That's where they'll go on, they'll scrape the ground, and actually he'll come back and urinate on his
Actually
musk
urinate in the
glands.
spot.
And that's just sort of a clue into the does in that area that I'm here and ready. And
Marks his territory, and when the doe's receptive, she'll come by and urinate in the same spot, and before you know it, they'll be together running around out
that's
here.
great. Make more big bucks like him.
Yeah, he was probably looking for the fight that was fixing to take his female away
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
He wasn't about to let that happen, and it cost him.
Look how beautifully symmetrical they are here.
He's really got some long beans.
That's a good what? It's a good probably 23 outside, probably a good
yeah.
21 on the inside at least.
Nice deer.
Oh,
Carries his mass all the way to the end of the antler.
sure does. That's amazing.
Lots of length in the brow tines.
What an animal. That's what it's all about right here.
That's right. That's an
gorgeous.
excellent deer.
Donnie, thanks a bunch.
You bet.
Nothing like hunting whitetail deer in South Texas.
Nothing like it.
About 15, 20 miles from the border. Mexico. Woo, let's get him home.
All right, let's do it.
I like to know that big black bears still roam the forest floor. I like to know wild turkeys strut and gobble as before. That racing graceful antelope still run the grassy range, and dancing prairie chicken boom and stamp across the plain. I'd like to visit meadows with herds of bugling elk. I'd like to stand with bighorn sheep upon their rocky shelf, to see the wood duck settle down, see beaver and much more. I'm so proud of what we've done, America's wildlife to read.
Lordy.
Right by.
I mean, walked right around the corner of the blind. Well, that's great.
Stay tuned. Adventures in the Wild will return right after this.
Well, before we put away our packs and cameras until the next trip, just wanted to thank you for watching the show today and giving me the opportunity to share with you some of my outdoor adventures I've been lucky enough to have. I really would appreciate you letting me know how you liked today's show and Adventures in the Wild. Please write to me with your comments and suggestions and let me know what you would most like to see on the show. Send your letters to Adventures in the Wild, care of Tempo Television, P.O. Box 702-160, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74170. And remember, it was the hunters who have, through the Pittman-Robertson Act, contributed almost $2.5 billion towards the conservation of America's wildlife populations. These contributions were paid entirely by hunters through special taxes assessed only on special hunting gear, firearms, ammunition, and archery products, and were allocated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service solely towards the conservation of wildlife and wildlife habitat. Without these special taxes, not only would it most likely have been impossible for me to bring you the show today, but there probably would be no hunting by hunters, wildlife to see by nature lovers, or animals in our national parks and countrysides for our grandchildren to see. So on behalf of myself, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the many fine manufacturers of these special outdoor products, I just wanted to say thanks for restoring America's wildlife populations to all-time record highs. Thanks.
like hunting, fishing, and the great outdoors, then come along today with Dave Embry in search of the world's greatest outdoor adventures. You'll go all over the world, from Alaska to South America, Canada to Mexico, in search of the most elusive and dangerous game in the world. This is Dave Embry's Adventures in the Wild. Today on Adventures in the Wild, go with Dave on a fall hunt for the wary and sharp-eyed Rio Grande turkey. It's in the small town of Mutual near Woodward in western Oklahoma that Dave will team up with veteran turkey guide and outfitter Sam Van Nostrum of Cross 7 Safaris. Together, they'll try to locate, then bust up or separate a flock of these wild birds, then call them back together to a place where they'll be waiting. So now, here's Dave to tell you more about the Rio Grandes.
Well, you know, I'll never forget that early morning. It was about 20 years ago when I was a young boy and on my way down to the Mississippi River bottoms with my dad and one of his friends to go duck hunting. We were riding along a levee in my dad's friend's truck when all of a sudden he slams on the brakes and points over the dash. He yells, looky there at those turkeys. Well, sure enough, they're 400 or 500 yards away were a dozen turkeys heading full steam for the woods. Well, that was the first time I'd ever seen a wild turkey, and man, was I ever excited. The excitement of just seeing those old turkeys stayed with me for months, as I told all my friends and buddies about seeing them. And I can still remember today the great feeling I had seeing those elusive old birds running for the woods. But you know, I was really lucky to have seen those turkeys 20 years ago. And I doubt in my granddad's time, back in the early 1900s, that he ever saw a wild turkey. That's because there weren't many of them around in most parts of the country, only in a few southern states were the turkeys found. But today, due largely to the conservation efforts by hunters through the self-imposed Pittman-Robertson Act, turkeys are at an all-time record high, with populations estimated at 3 million inhabiting almost every state. There are 6 subspecies of turkey in North America. The Gould's turkey, which inhabits a small portion of New Mexico and Mexico. The hybrid turkey is in parts of Nebraska, California, Montana, and Oregon. The eastern turkey is in most eastern states, while the Florida turkey, or Osceola, inhabits Florida. The Merriams are in most western states, and the ones we'll be hunting today inhabit central and western Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, and it's called the Rio Grande turkey. With populations of all species at record highs, the turkey has provided the hunter with an opportunity to get out in the spring and hit the woods to try and lure in that lovesick old Tom. In the fall, when the mating season isn't on, the best way to call in a bird is to first locate a group, then bust the flock up, and then try to call them back together again. When hunting for turkey, full camouflage is a must, as a turkey's eyes are excellent. They've got peripheral vision, which covers almost 360 degrees around that old turkey's head. Most turkeys are taken with a shotgun, preferably a Magnum with a full choke. I also like to use these special loads on the hunt. You see that even the box is camouflaged. They're double X Magnum turkey loads with a number 4 copper-plated shot. There's also some more popular loads that are on the market today that use a combination of shot sizes, say a number 2 and a 6, that are all in one shell. It's also a good idea to pattern your shotgun before going in the field. You should aim for the head and neck of the turkey, and with that small of a target, you need to be sure that you know where your shots are going and how many pellets will hit the vital area at a given distance. You can purchase a commercial target, just like the ones that I've got here, or you can simply draw the head and neck of a turkey on a poster board, then take careful aim and squeeze the trigger slowly. Then go down and make sure that you're getting at least 3 or 4 pellets into the vital area if you're using a number 4 shot, and you need a few more pellets, say 6 or 8, if you're using, say, a number 6 shot. And then try it at different distances as you're moving around. If you're hunting with the bow, you'll need to get a lot of practice in, as always, with the bow, and be sure that you use the same type of a broadhead that you'll use when hunting any other big game. Well, before we started searching for the birds to bust up, Sam and I walked along the Canadian River and talked a little bit about how we were going to try to get within shooting range of one of those wary old gobblers.
Today we've got about 4.5 miles to this North Canadian river bottom. It runs diagonally through the ranch from up here in the northwest part of it, heading down to the southeast.
That's pretty, especially the river back down through there. It looks nice.
Yeah, it's a nice bluff right here. We're going to be hunting, as a matter of fact, right off down around this bend. You can see some openings just the other side of this first stand of cottonwoods. There's about 2 or 3 good bunches of turkeys that's been working the stretch of the river.
Good. Well, how are we going to hunt? This is fall, you know. How are we going to hunt?